Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Laurent Notin. Laurent has always been very shy. Although he became quite good at networking and sales over time, he was an introvert until his teenage years. Then, like many, partied too much when he was at university. At the age of 23, he left for Southeast Asia from France and lived there for 20 years. Then moved to Finland in 2019. He started running other companies by accident, however, loved it from day one, and became a coach to entrepreneurs in 2017. As a coach, he helps entrepreneurs avoid being the main bottleneck in their business. In 2014, he had a small burnout and found Crossfit, which literally changed his life. He was once asked, what's the difference between his ages of 30 and 40? His answer was, I'm more in control now, enjoying the journey, where prior he was too focused on the destination. Due to that focus on the end result and going from one thing to another, he never really stopped to enjoy the view. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Laurent. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you very much, Dwight, for having me, and good job on pronouncing my name correct.
I'm going to, you know what? I can't promise it'll be the same from the start to the finish, but I'm certainly going to try. So I really appreciate you coming on. I'm quite intrigued by, the journey that you've taken. But before we get into the journey of the last 20 years of your life, one of the things I like focusing on is somebody's origin. And what do I mean by that? Well, the origin from your earliest recollections to where you are today, because I believe that we don't give our story from, early childhood to where we are now enough credit and development, good, bad, or ugly. Some of the things that people share or that I've shared on podcasts as a guest is who I am. I became this person because of the trials and tribulations, the highs and the lows of childhood up to adulthood. So could you do me a favor and share what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently?
Wow, where to start? If I think about it right now, what's coming up in my mind, I see myself playing in the garden, my parents' house, a lot, like all the summers. I remember I had a friend. He was the neighbor's grandson, and we used to play in my home outside. We had these big cherry trees, and we were climbing the trees and playing cowboys and going like pam pam pam. I remember all of that, and I can tell you even more that I remember the last day we played. I don't know why. I don't know why it is that clear in my mind. I remember I was where I was sitting in the garden. I remember that we were playing like I think detective, something like that. I had a gun, a holster on my side. And that was the last day we played together. And then I don't know what this guy became. That I remember. I remember also my days at school. Remember that I had my teenage life. My parents were wealthy, so I had not too much of an issue. growing up. But I remember how shy I was, and that for a long time, until I think until I reached high school and I was like 15, I only had one friend, and we were doing apart from this neighborhood friend, that other friend was the only person I was spending my time with. We were going to the same school, we were in the same class, we were walking to school together and coming back to school. We did that all together until we were like, I think something like 15 and 16, and then we lost track of each other, and I don't know what he has become today. What else do I remember? I remember later on that he had some difficulties with my parents, with my father especially. I remember that my father was absent a lot. Not absent in the fact that he was coming home. He was not traveling a lot, but he was an entrepreneur. He had his company, and he was absent in the sense that we were going on vacation. We were going to ski during the ski season. I remember we were going every summer. We go to the sea and rent an apartment for maybe a month or so. But my father was never there. He was only coming for the weekend because he was working all the time. The only moment where he would stop working was for Christmas, the last 2 weeks of December, because he would close the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of similarities. My dad, entrepreneur, very successful entrepreneur. I didn't know that my parents were wealthy though till I was like 16, 15.
Yeah.
Had no clue. We lived a very simple life, and I don't want the listeners or yourself to think that things weren't good, because we had food, we had a shelter. We didn't really. My dad was always busy. He used to take us to a local lake, and he'd park a trailer, right? We'd stay in this trailer. It wasn't even somewhere exotic by the sea like you went. And we'd see him in the evenings, not every evening, because he owned a farm equipment dealership and dealt with farmers. So summertime we have off. Whereas my dad, well, that's his busiest time of the year. He needs to be at the business. And he'd work early in the morning till late at night. We'd see him once or twice, but not a lot, not every night. And even if he did come, sometimes I'd be already, as a little guy, I wasn't very old, so I'd be sleeping. So he was very much into his business. Christmas time, similar situation. We'd see him because wintertime, obviously, for us here in Canada, we got lots of snow, so there's nobody really farming. So he'd slow down somewhat, but then the connection wasn't always there because we don't see each other a lot throughout the year because he'd get up in the morning and be gone before I'd go to school. I'd go to bed at night, same thing. He'd come home, and he was a workaholic, and I appreciate the fact of what he did for our family, and it was great, but I had difficulties with him too in that extent, and I resented him. But as an adult, obviously, I look back and I appreciate how much sweat equity he put into our family and what he was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
He was one of 18 kids. So he was
18 kids.
Yes.
Wow.
And my mom was one of 9. Right.
Wow.
So they basically, they understood hardships. So they always wanted more for us kids, but yet there was also that scarcity mindset. I don't know if your father might have had that, or if, I can see it years later. I can see it in my father. He had that scarcity mindset of what happens if I lose it all? What happens if I stop working really hard and it goes away?
Yeah.
What about my family? All the things that I'm assuming, but I could, just from conversations, you can pick up on that, right?
Yes. Yes. And it was, also my father was there, I remember we would have lunch all the time together because we were living very close to his company, and he would drive me to school after lunch. But I mean, I know he has always loved us, but is I don't know, he's an old generation. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, of
Typical
course it
family.
does.
He didn't have a great relationship with his parents himself. Doesn't have great relationship with his brother and sister, unfortunately. And I think he didn't really know how to show his love, his affection, and that has turned with a lot of conflict between me and him, until the time where I remember one time, and I don't know how old I was, in my 30s, I would say, early 30s. We came back. I had kids, so it must have been in my early 30s, and we came back from Asia for vacation with my ex partner and my kids, and we had such a big fight with I had such a big fight with my father. So we stayed at my grandparents because for 2 weeks, because the fight was at the beginning of the vacation, and we stayed for 2 weeks with my parents because my parents had not seen their grandchildren for a year, so we stayed there. But I remember I had this ball inside me for the entire duration of the vacation. Didn't talk to my father for 2 weeks, and then as soon as we went back to Paris to the airport, that ball, as soon as I passed the I went into the waiting room, that ball just disappeared. But then I didn't talk to him for 3 months, and then one day he sent me a letter, uh, and he said some very personal stuff, and then I decided to forgive him.
Wow. That
Mm.
resonates a lot with me. I really appreciate you sharing that because, listeners, our parents aren't perfect. We're not
No.
perfect, but there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of heartache and burden that we bring from our childhood into adulthood that can't just be easily wiped away. So your
Yep.
father doing that took some courage. And for you to accept that and move forward with him and accept that apology, or even if the words aren't specifically I'm sorry, sometimes we need to read between the lines, because those older generations don't necessarily communicate at the same level. They're very proud the way they were growing up and raised. And I appreciate you sharing that, because there was times where my dad and I had our heated discussions or arguments, fights or whatever when I was growing up, grew up into adulthood. And, I love my dad. My dad, I know, loves me too, but it's just little simple things that we thought differently, because he grew up in an era of, in the 40s with all, one of 18 kids, a struggle, things that
Mm.
I couldn't necessarily really comprehend and appreciate. But again, fast forward now into my 50s, I really get it.
Yeah.
Right. I get the fact of why he did what he did. It doesn't excuse some of the behaviors or things that
Hmm.
happened on either front, because I'm not perfect. I want the listeners, you to think that I'm perfect. I said my fair share of things that I probably, most
Shouldn't
likely
have,
should have
yeah.
kept to myself, right? Should have kept
Yeah.
it between the 6 inches between my ears instead of letting it
Yeah.
flow down
I
here,
agree.
right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that, because, you know, our childhood is a combination of how we can become better or worse in some cases as an adult. And if we don't recognize it and actually talk it out, I find that it, like you said, you get a ball right here. Like, so you had that ball over that 2 weeks
Yeah.
of that holiday, but it started well before that.
Yes,
All
of
it did, all
course.
it did was get watered some more on the vacation, right? And it
Yeah.
grew again,
And it was
right?
time. It was time that I said the things that I had to say.
Good
You
for
know,
you. Yeah.
you mentioned communication. I think communication, or the lack of communication in my family has always been an issue. And unfortunately, this is something. So didn't have really good communication between my father and myself, but even with my mother. And so I was not taught to communicate, to communicate openly, to talk about things. It was better to keep everything inside.
Same as
That's what I
me.
was, yeah, that's what I was taught. So that is a pattern that I have reproduced when I grew up, and with my kids and my partners. And I had to overcome it. It's still not easy. I'm a coach. So,
Yeah, of
I
course.
have to
Yeah.
I have to
You got to
communicate.
continue to rise and climb,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. That is something I'm gonna fight all my life.
I
Like,
love you saying that, because I tell
mm,
people I'm gonna fight and I'm gonna scrap and I'm gonna keep on rising and climbing above the noise till my last breath.
yeah,
Because the moment that you or I think we've arrived, we're in trouble. We've stopped growing. We become camped again in our mindset. And how can we serve others, coach others, lift other people up if we can't continually feel good about who we are? Because
indeed.
wouldn't you agree that if we don't love ourselves and continually feed the 6 inches, how is it, it's almost impossible to support other people, because then we're living a script. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I can help you, John or Sally. This is what you need to do with your business, or this is what you need to do with your personal life, or this is what you need to do with your finances. But it's all methodical, it's scripted, there's no emotion, there's no vulnerability. And I think the best coaches are the people that are able to share and be vulnerable and relatable.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the reasons also I became a coach is because I've always cared more about others than myself. Like, I've really wanted to genuinely help others succeed, even if sometimes they don't want my help, which sometimes that has backlashed on me,
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I'm laughing because I hear you, right? And all we can do, though, I think one of the secrets I've found um, with coaching, and as I get better with it, is to find different ways to wordsmith, because the word is the most powerful tool we have. And trying to, I've become a student of human nature more and more over the last, probably, I'd say it started probably at least 20 years ago. But I've gotten better over the last few years of being a wordsmith and knowing what to say. I prefer, even today, I prefer to do a video call with my clients.
Mhm.
If we can't see each other face to face, depending on where they're located. I have clients 10, 12 hours away from here. We're not jumping in a plane. We do Zoom calls, or we
Yeah.
would do whatever, Skype calls. And I watch their body language. I watch when I say to them, I look for little, tells. Their shoulders go up. I know they're more engaged when they lean forward toward their screen, and you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Their head
Yeah.
nods, because I think we owe it to the people we coach, wouldn't you agree, that to always perfect how we deliver, how
Of
we
course.
present ourselves and control our body language, because people are so vulnerable, and it's so easy to push them off the cliff. And then they may never ever get help again from somebody else because
Mhm.
we did such a poor job. So I'm always striving to be the best coach I can be. So I really appreciate that you're trying to be the best servant and coach you can of others, so that we don't make that mistake where we offend somebody. I don't think I'll ever be perfect, but I'm certainly striving to be a better version than I was even a year ago, 5 years ago.
Yes. Yes. And that is being a better version of myself. That is something that has always really pushed me. And so, and you were talking about, how we have to become better as coach. And I think also a lot comes from being learning to be more self-aware, like
True.
recognizing the patterns before they come so that you can stop them. For example, dealing with emotions, because when you're in a coaching situation, you have to be neutral. Sometimes it is difficult not to be neutral. But then this is something that you can try to reproduce when you're having a conversation with your partner, for instance. And instead of, I'm French, so I defend myself a lot. So being defensive is also because of sort of the lack of communication that I had with my
Your
parents.
childhood.
Yeah, yeah. And I could see also my father is he acts like that, very defensive. So that is, it's for me, it's always like, okay, I recognize that I'm being defensive, so I need to stop doing it and really try to focus on the other person and what the other person is trying to tell me. So that's what it is. But that's what it takes for me to be more self-aware.
Yeah, because you're fighting a learned behavior,
Yeah.
and learned behavior is so powerful. Like, literally, when we're younger and we're growing up, listeners, think about it. You worship your parents. even abusive parents as you're growing up, or parents that are not necessarily verbally or physically abusive, they're abusive in the sense of lack of time commitment to
Mhm.
your development. That is a learned type of behavior too, like you mentioned, and all of a sudden you're not necessarily connected to your own family or to friends, or you repeat that pattern of behavior you learned. It's the realization and self-awareness, like you said, is so key.
Yeah.
Self-awareness. But how do we get self-awareness? Talking about it, realizing it, having mentors that are willing to kindly, I'll say that again, kindly
Mhm.
call us out and say, they're
Yeah.
coaching us. And like you said, being neutral and, just discovering the patterns of behavior. And I know I'm coaching somebody and talking to them, and they'll say something, and I'll wait till they're done. And I'll say, you know, I really appreciate you sharing that. And here's what happened to me. I can really relate to you.
Mhm.
And that vulnerability, you'll all of a sudden see their shoulders that were up go down,
Yep.
and they're leaning
Yeah.
forward and they're smiling. And, it just reaffirms to me that what I'm doing is a good thing, that I need to continue to strive to be the best version of myself every day, have gratitude every single day, to God, saying, thank you for giving me another day to be the best version of myself so that I can serve others. I'm
Mhm.
constantly reminding myself that I'm on this planet as a child of, again, maybe you're not God fearing, but I am, and I'm a child of God, and he wants me to serve his children, and I'm one of his children. He's given me, I'm the vessel to go out and spread kindness, empathy, um, connection. Maybe
Yep.
I'm the first thing in that person's life that's ever given them any ability to have a soundboard to talk to,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
you can probably agree, coaching can take you anywhere. Yeah, sometimes there's no
Absolutely.
real script, is there? It's just, it
No.
goes wherever it needs to go based on their life
Most
and
of the
how we
time,
can, yeah.
apart maybe from the first coaching session, I kind of have no idea what we're going to talk about. I
Yeah.
mean, you have a guideline, you know what you're working on, the goals you want to achieve, but people have life in between sessions, things happen, and when they join a session, they may be in a specific mood and they want to talk about a specific topic that you didn't know about. And for me, it's very rewarding when my clients really open up and they talk about private stuff, like deep issues that they
Yeah,
have,
exactly.
because
Yeah.
then they trust you, and that what they are saying now, because they feel safe, what they're saying, you're like touching on something that is really, really important that you're gonna be able to use and work from. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a journey in life to work on ourselves enough so that when we help others, whether or not you're, listeners, you don't have to be a coach to do what we're talking about. It's just being a good human being. People
Mhm.
want to know, like, and trust you. They want to know you, who you are. They don't care what you know. They want to know how much you care first. Once they know you care, then you're able to make a difference in their lives, just as their friend, even. Right. And then they will like you and they'll trust you. And it's a journey. It's not something that's come to either of us easily, right? You have to work at it. So
Yeah.
at the age of 23, you made a pivotal change and went to Southeast Asia from France and lived there for
Yes.
20 years. What was the
Yes.
driving force behind that? And what takeaway do you have from that 20 years?
Okay, so the reason I moved to Asia is because I was with someone, the mother of my kids, and she applied for a 9 month paid internship overseas, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because she's teaching French to foreigners.
Hmm.
And she looked at all the countries that were available, and I think there was something like 80 of them. And she saw a country called Laos, which is in the middle of Southeast Asia, a
Yeah.
very landlocked country. And she
Yeah.
was like, all right, I'm going to put that on my first choice because nobody will select it. She was right. Nobody really selected it. And so she was taken, she was accepted. So initially for 9 months. And I was in a period of my time where I had just finished my military service. No confidence in myself, like really very low confidence. I was like you said, I was too busy partying too much at school and not doing the work. And I was going into job interviews to be a salesperson. I sucked like a lot. Like all the job interviews I was doing, they were crap. And so I didn't really know what to do. And so that opportunity came and said, yeah, let's do it. You know, I think I needed I needed a, I don't know, maybe I needed a kick in the butt, you know, and maybe that provided me with the opportunity to do something else, to be, you know, to go for an adventure. And we did it. And we loved it so much that, you know, we stayed 7 years in Laos, and then I found a job in Cambodia. We moved to Cambodia, and then I went to Vietnam. I came back to Cambodia, and yeah, 20 years in total in the region.
Wow. You said you were in the military. How long were you in the military for?
Just 10 months, because it's I was the last year of mandatory military service, 10 months. I could have canceled it, or it was not very canceled. It was like you could have postponed it indefinitely if I had a job, but I didn't have a job, so I had to go. So I had to go, plus I didn't know what else to do. I remember my father was not happy about that, by the way. Really, wow, he was not happy.
He would have preferred you being working.
Yeah. But I also remember my father bringing me to the train on the day I left to Laos. So I took the train from south of France to Paris, and I was meeting my ex-partner in Paris. And I remember seeing, so he came with me to the train. He drove me to the train station. He waited for me to leave, and I remember seeing him crying on the platform. And that was the first time I was seeing my father crying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would have been emotional.
Yeah. Do you want to know what was the second time I saw him crying? I'm going to tell you.
Sure. Absolutely. Go ahead.
When he celebrated his 70th anniversary, so that was like, what, 5 years ago now? A bit less. 3 years ago. I was separated. So I was by myself, and I was still living in Cambodia. And they went, I know that my father and my brother and his family always went to the ski resort for a week, you know, in February during the school holidays. And so I surprised him. I went there to celebrate, and it was his birthday was during that week, you know, at the ski resort. So I surprised him. We arranged everything with my brother. It was really funny because usually, you know, they would travel together by car to the ski resort, but they had to create some sort of an excuse not to travel back together. And then I appeared at the door. I knock at the door. We make sure that he would open the door, and then that's the second time I saw him cry.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's touching, because, you know, and that helps wash away all the years of angst and tension and stress. To have that, I can, you know, I won't share what, but I can remember the first time I ever seen my dad cry as well. And I've seen him a couple times since then. Very proud man. Again, entrepreneur like your father, very wealthy as well. Yeah, so that's I like that. Thank you for sharing that. When you were in the military for that 10 months, did it shape you in any way? Did you learn anything in the military for that 10 months?
Nothing.
Or was just
nothing. It was a complete waste of time. I put on weight, like a lot of weight, because the food was amazing. Yeah, because I was at the headquarters of the which army was it? The air. So the Royal Air Force. Yeah. So I was the headquarters in Paris, and you had all the top ranking officers over there. So they had like 3 or 4 restaurants. Absolutely amazing.
Wow.
I know, it was a complete waste of time, honestly. I didn't check anything.
Not the answer I expected, but I love it. It's better to be, you know what though? Listeners, if you're like me, I'm smiling because it's like, cool. I like the answer. It's like, but it's you, you're being your genuine you. You're not being
Yeah,
phony. You're being vulnerable. I appreciate that response. That's great. So, you then moved to Finland in 2019. Why
yes.
Finland? What was the attraction? And did you ever think about going back to France?
Right. So I moved to Finland because of another woman whom I met in Cambodia. She's Finnish, and I reached a point after 20 years in Southeast Asia. I was fed up. I needed a change. I was fed up of living over there. I wanted to be closer to my parents. I wanted something also a bit different in terms of nature. Southeast Asia is absolutely amazing. It's beautiful, but it's not the same type of nature that you can get here in Europe, especially in Finland. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to be closer to my parents, but I didn't want to go back to France. I'm not ready to go back to France. I want to. I don't know when if I ever be ready. But I want to stay. I want to stay overseas, continue the adventure. And so she also, my partner also was looking at, going back. She'd lived overseas, like she lived in the US and then moved to Cambodia and for 8 years in total, I think, overseas. So it was time for her to move back. And so we were like, okay, let's go to Finland.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I like the realization you may never go back, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody always has these stories or these things they want to project on us that we need to be connected to our home place, right? That we have to always go back, or why wouldn't you want to go back? And
Mhm.
because I'm on my own adventure, and
Exactly.
my family's adventure does not have to become my reality. My reality is what I want. So you're creating your own reality, and
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So so you ended up staying in Finland, and you're happy there, obviously.
Yeah. So far, so good. Finland is a great country. Nature is fantastic. The winter is a bit cold though. It's a bit dark very quickly.
Yeah, we get where I am is we get snow. I don't know if you get a lot of snow there, but we get snow. It gets cold here, and like all the leaves, I'm looking outside my windows here, and there's very few leaves left on the
Yeah,
trees. And
same.
right, it like
Yeah,
you guys are in Celsius there too, right?
yeah. Well, I live in Helsinki, so south of Finland. So it's if you go to the north, it's even like I think 2,000 kilometers. I think Finland. It's the
Oh,
longest
okay.
stretch, I think,
Yeah.
or a bit less than that. But here in Helsinki at the moment, it gets dark around like 4:30 p.m. in the morning. The sun is up. Well, the sun, the gray, the sky. You see the sky
Yeah.
with all the
Yeah.
clouds around. I don't know, 7:30, and then it's gonna go darker. That's a bit difficult. Still, after only 2 years, it's difficult to adapt. But that's only it's the rest is it's pretty great.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's fine. I
life.
can live with
Well,
that.
like the sun come up here. Oh, this time of the year, it's probably around 8 o'clock,
Yeah,
8:30. It's down by 5:30. And obviously, as we continue into the season, it's going to get we'll wake up, it'll be dark. We'll go to bed, it'll be dark. But
yeah.
it's today with wind chill. My son was up earlier, and it was with wind chill, it was -11 out Celsius.
Ooh,
Right. So our high today is supposed to be 5 degrees. I don't know what your high and lows are, but yeah, our high today is supposed to be 5 degrees only. Whereas, a couple weeks back, we're 24, 25, right?
yeah.
It's just all of a sudden it's beautiful. Then it goes off a cliff.
Bam.
Right. So, well, that's great. So you started running companies for others by accident, eventually
Yeah.
becoming a coach to entrepreneurs in
Yes.
2017. What transpired to put you in the position to run companies and eventually become a coach for entrepreneurs?
Okay. So when went to Laos, didn't have a job, right? So before I left, I sent my CVs to the French companies in Laos, and there were not a lot, a handful of them. And when I arrived in Laos, this first week I didn't do anything, just getting used to the country. I mean, It was very different from what I was used to. And then the second week I started, I thought, okay, I'm gonna now contact the companies that I sent my CV to. And the first company I contacted was a small market research agency. And I had a job interview with them, and they said, well, we're happy to take you on board, but we can't pay you. They paid me like, I think it was $250 a month, which is not a lot. Even at that time, it was like we were in 1999. But I was like, yeah, let's do it because my partner, she has money. We don't need a lot to have a great life in Laos. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get that experience. And so I started working for them. And after a year, so it was a couple. And he was French Cambodian and she was French Laotian. And after a year, they told me, look, we're going to move country. We're going to move to Cambodia. We need someone to run the business for us. You are the person we trust the most among our team. So here are the keys. Go on. That's pretty much how it happened. I was like, are you sure?
Wow. Because you weren't sure. So
No.
yeah.
Like I said, like big lack of self-confidence, even after a year of working for them. And yeah, I started running a company. Man, I loved it from day one. I was like, whoa, that's cool. Running a company, that's cool. There's so much that you need to learn. There's so much new stuff. You have to take care of the people. And that's what I kept on doing. I ran their company for 3 years. Then I moved and worked for another guy who became a friend. And he was by himself and he needed someone to act as a co-founder to help him, with business development. I helped him for another 3.5 years. Then I was offered a job to Cambodia, where I initially went for another research company where I started as a research director, and then very quickly the managing director and one of the shareholder was never there. So I moved into doing his job. And then until he made me like the director of the country director. Then I moved to the regional director for this company because they have countries they have offices in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. So I was managing those 3 companies. Then I left. I went to work in advertising agency where I was a shareholder this time, and I was running the company. And then I stayed 4 years, and then I was like, okay, now it's time to do something for myself. And that's why. And before I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs all the time. My best friends are entrepreneurs. I mean, they have always pushed me to do something for myself, but I was never ready until I don't know, it started growing more and more inside me. And I was coming around the age of 40. And I was like, if I don't do it now, I will never do it. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. And once I decided I will do it, I was like, okay, what is it that I'm going to do? What is it that I really like? Who I am. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And then I realized that I've always loved, I've always cared more about others than about myself. Like I told you before, like the situations at work that I was enjoying the most were situations where I was training, mentoring, coaching my staff, even presenting something to clients. And I also had the opportunities to give some lectures at universities. And I love that, being on a stage, as a speaker. I've always enjoyed those moments. I've always enjoyed, those aha moments that you create for people, and you see the light in the eyes, and you change something in them. And so I thought, all right, I'm gonna become a coach. It just made sense. I know how to ask questions too, because I worked in the market research industry for 14 years. So asking questions was, was a skill that I developed. And because I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs, I sat in a seat. I ran companies like they were my own, because the entrepreneurs I was working for, they were not there it was their company, but they were not there. So they really needed someone on the ground. So all of that combined together, it just made sense. I became a coach to entrepreneur. And here I am today, 4 years after.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. And my next question flows right into that. It's just awesome. And I basically say, I know you like asking a lot of questions to entrepreneurs. Why is asking questions so important to help entrepreneurs avoid being the main bottleneck in their business?
Because the right questions have the power to unlock people. The right question is when someone tells you, man, your question is bothering me. Not to use a bad word. I'm being very polite here, but I've heard worse than that. And I'm like,
Yes.
yes, I know that this is exactly why I am asking this question. And if we don't spend, sometimes I would say, we're stuck into situations that we created ourselves because we're not asking the right questions. We used to have a saying in market research. We used to say, like, with the great questions comes the great answers. That's very true. It's also the opposite is very true. With crap questions come crap answers, but with zero questions comes zero answers. And so we are stuck, and we get, we got all these stories into our heads, repeating into circles and growing. Those stories are growing, and we are the only spectator of our stories. There's no one else there because they're all in our mind. And we can't find a way out because we're not asking questions. Simple questions like, okay, what's going on? Why? What I'm waiting for. One of my favorite questions. What are you waiting for? You hear often this. My clients are like, yeah, I want to do this and I want to do that, and if I were doing this, I know that this and this would happen. It would make me feel better. And then I ask the question, but what are you waiting for? And then you see them. They like this. They stop for a while, and then hit them, and they're like, nothing. So go on, do it. If nothing is on your way. So that's why asking questions are so fundamental.
Well, if nobody challenges you, you're gonna always listen to the same excuses you give yourself, the same BS. And we start living on, I talk about it a lot and coach on it, right? Living on the hamster wheel of life.
Yeah.
People get on, they go to work, go home, get paid. No matter if they're an entrepreneur. I know entrepreneurs that are stuck in a loop. They're not really successful in their mindset. Their business could be relatively successful, but they're not successful in growing, and they become stagnant. People in careers, people just at a job, they get stuck on that hamster wheel of life, and nobody ever says to them, what are you waiting for? When's the right time? Like, people will say, well, I don't know. Well, when do you think the right time is? So I ask similar questions to what you're talking about. It makes me, yeah, we have a lot in common. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I look forward to our continued relationship in the future and seeing how we can help each other continue to level up. But yeah, so like you said, your favorite question, what are you waiting for? Somebody's got to push them off the wheel and make it so that they are thinking different.
Yeah, that and why. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. Start with why, but that why question. But you don't ask it only one time. Keep on asking it 3 or 4 times, 5 times until you go like really, really deep into the real why, the real reason. That is very powerful.
It can take quite a few whys.
Yes.
Right. When you start talking to people, and then you'll feel the gamut of emotions, from anger to first standoffish, then they'll get angry because you're pushing buttons that they've continually put up a shield so somebody couldn't push that button. So yes, I agree with you with what Simon talks about and the why. It is so important for us, Laurent, for people to actually do that, to put themselves through it after somebody else puts them through it. I'm actually have a good friend of mine. She's developed a program. I've had her on my show before. I'm going to have her on again because she just did some more developmental work, and it's all around breaking down people's barriers using why,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that. So you hit what you call a small burnout in
Yes.
2014. I love this
Yes.
conversation that we're going to have, and found CrossFit would change your life. I myself
Yeah.
have been involved in CrossFit, which at the time was just starting. It was just coming new in Canada. This is back in like 2006, 2005, somewhere around there. Um, and sadly had to quit due to health issues, but I know what it did for me on a physical level. I've even had one of my kids involved in CrossFit. I have a friend of mine that owns a CrossFit gym. So I know the benefits of it, but could you please give the listeners your take on what it does, not just for your physical well-being, however, your emotional and one's mindset?
Oh yeah. Oh God. So physically, I am in the shape of my life. I'm 45. I started CrossFit when I was 38. I wasn't really fit before that, I could say. I mean, I was playing football a little bit with friends, and we had like a game every week, and we were practicing like once a week or twice a week. I was the goalkeeper, so I was moving, but I was eating too much. I was drinking way too much, and I felt like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I reached a point where it was time that I was fed up of football and I need something new. And so someone told me about CrossFit, that CrossFit box in Cambodia had just opened, and I remember they were offering like a trial workout 1 hour session for free. I went there, man, I was hooked. Like that workout, which was, now that I remember that workout 8 years ago, which was like really, really, really small compared to what I'm able to do today. I was hooked. I was like, damn, I found it. That's what I was waiting for all my life. And then since I've been on that journey where I changed my life around CrossFit, because I found CrossFit and I wanted to become better at it. And so I had to change my life to be able to do that. I changed my diet. I stopped drinking. I still enjoy, don't get me wrong, I still enjoy my wine and a couple of beer, but not that's all I can take now. And I was training harder and harder and harder. And the physical impact of CrossFit, I see it every day in my life, in my daily activities. I wake up, I sleep better. I am more efficient because I feel good. I know I look better too. I can carry stuff, effortlessly. For instance, I climb the stairs without being out of breath, which was not happening before. If I have my bicycle, I need to move my bicycle around. I just can carry my bicycle overhead. And I remember some people were looking at me like, "Whoa, yeah, the bicycle is light." Not only it's light, I can do it because I know I have the financial movement to be able to do it. So that I see that physically that every day. And now that I know how it feels to be fit at my level, it's absolutely out of question that I will go back into my old me. When I die, I want to be still doing CrossFit until I die. I want when I am 90 years old or more, hopefully, I want to be able to walk straight. I want to be able to do stuff by myself. So that's one thing physically. On the mental aspect, it has enabled me to, it helps me know myself better, because CrossFit is always a challenge. It's you against yourself all the time. So how far can you push? It has brought me discipline, which discipline that I can use in my work, in my daily life and in my work. It has brought me self-confidence, which I needed a lot. I became a CrossFit coach before I became a coach to entrepreneur. So I got my level 1 certification 5 years ago, which I won't renew because this now it's you know it's in the past. Now I'm more focused on being a coach to entrepreneurs, but this is all my coaching journey started. It just made sense. I loved it, and I wanted to share it with people because it was so great that the only thing I wanted to tell people is just wanted to talk about CrossFit all the time. I still want to talk about CrossFit all the time. So
Well,
yeah,
and that was one
it's
of the
amazing.
biggest things that attracted when I was reading and it talked about CrossFit. It triggered me. Um, the listeners, my listeners that listen all the time already know I have a degenerative spine disease. I had no choice but to give up CrossFit. The last time I did CrossFit, I actually severely injured myself, and I was told I could never do it again. So there is physical things that I can do, but then as I've aged, I've got rotator cuff issues from doing stupid stuff. As you know, we think we're bulletproof when we're younger, and we pay a price when we're older.
Yeah.
But for the listeners, check out CrossFit. I have,
Yeah.
For those that are listening that listen quite regularly or all the time, Angie Manson, pardon me, I interviewed her on my show, and she uses CrossFit. She has all over California. She has addiction counseling services, and she uses CrossFit in combination with addiction counseling to help people that are addicts to level up, recover their lives, and feel better about themselves physically. Because when you feel physically better, your brain feels better. Like you said,
Exactly.
your work life, your daily life, your self-confidence. I loved your response. I made an assumption that's what I would get as an answer, because most people that talk about CrossFit, especially they put it in their bio like you did, it has literally changed their lives. I know what it did for my friend that owns a CrossFit studio. I know what it did for my son I started my son in CrossFit when he was 14. He's now 22. He doesn't do it anymore. But when he did do it for a couple of years, he was shy. He was introverted at school, and it made a huge difference in his life to be in CrossFit. And people that are listening, you can't start him that young. Absolutely, you can. A good CrossFit studio knows that they have to be careful because they're still growing, and it's done accordingly. He was in a CrossFit class with adults all the way up to in their 50s, and they loved him because he could keep up to them to his level, obviously, and he never quit. When he finally did stop doing CrossFit after a couple of years, he had actually injured himself really bad because he was so determined to prove to himself, to the group, that he pushed himself when he had injured himself, and he didn't let them know. Does that make sense? Right. So, but CrossFit's a beautiful thing. So listeners, check it out. I don't think there's anywhere on the planet that you can't take CrossFit. And if you want to know what it's about, second largest search engine in the world, which is YouTube. You can see what CrossFit's about. I've done it personally myself. It is amazing. If you have physical ailments, so check with a medical professional before you do it, because you could injure yourself, right? So make sure you check it out before you go and just jump into CrossFit, because it's not hard, but it's not easy either, right?
It is not. It's intense, but it will teach you how to do functional movements, the movements that your body is supposed to be doing, like a squat, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I've seen people coming to CrossFit with knees issues, getting through CrossFit and being able to squat with with no knees issues anymore.
Well, think about it though. A lot of people don't your joints need to be lubricated. They need to be used. We live such a sedentary lifestyle in the world. And that person that has a sore knee or the aches and pains, what does a doctor do? They write a script. Here's a prescription, pop pills to hide and mask it. When in reality, it's their lack of physical activity. And it's going to be difficult at first. If you haven't bent your joints or your hips, or you haven't done things, you're going to be hurting at first. But you know what? It's a pain, pleasure principle. That pain will end up giving you long-term pleasure, and do it at the pace that's comfortable to you. But unless you have a known health issue, like you've had damage in your knee or whatever, you should be able to do CrossFit. You should be able to slowly do things. A good CrossFit gym and coach is going to realize they should do assessment on you anyway.
Yeah.
And figure out a program for you. And you're going to start little baby steps, just like we teach people as entrepreneurs, little baby steps. We peel back the layers of what got them to where they are now and how they're feeling mentally. CrossFit's going to help you with it physically. And that physical change is going to help you mentally as well. And that's what I wanted Laurent to bring up. And I really appreciate your response. Thank you so much. Listeners, you want to know more? We're going to have stuff at the end, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes too, where you'll be able to reach out and talk to them more about it. Because sometimes it's just talking to somebody and asking questions, right? Remember, you love questions, so they can ask questions of you. You can ask questions back, and you can possibly direct them to understanding why CrossFit can change them both physically and, most importantly, mentally. When we change our mental mindset, our emotional mindset strengthens. And I could see the joy in your face as you were talking about it, right?
Oh,
so
yeah,
so those of you listening, jump onto YouTube and take a look, right? You can find it on my YouTube channel. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about is around that, some of us as we age have more wisdom. I myself understand your statement and the feeling of experiencing life and acting different from one decade to the next. I find this happens to those that learn to take their mistakes and turn them into life lessons. Thus, they have life wisdom. You mentioned you're more in control now than you were in your 30s, now that you're in your 40s. What exactly does being in control to you mean? Like, what portion of your life has become more stable, and how as important has it become to you in your 40s?
Being more in control means that I am more in the present moment. I live the present moment more, so I can remember what's going on. I'm in a period of my life now at 45. I'm looking at my old pictures of my kids when they were younger. So one of my kids now is 19, the other one is 15. And I'm like, damn, what? I don't remember all of this. Where did it go? And I don't want that anymore. I want, and I know why it was happening. It's because, like I said, I was too focused on some of the stuff. I was too focused on achieving for the sake of achieving, going from one destination to the other, especially at work, and having maybe, forgetting about more important stuff, things like family on the way. But now my focus is really more on, being more for who I am, expressing more of myself, and taking the time, enjoying the journey, because we only live once. Life is fantastic. Not every day, it's not every day easy, of course, but it's what you make out of it. And I don't want, when I'm gonna die, I don't want to have any more regrets. I have regrets in my life. I don't want to have any more regrets later on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that, so many of us have been on that, where we're focused on the destination and achieving, and we miss the gap or the journey in between, because life's in succession. This isn't a dress rehearsal. I have regrets too. But one of the things that I believe you've done already too, we accept those regrets and we use it as a stepping stone to make sure that regrets don't happen again. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Life is in session. But the biggest thing is back to what we talked about prior, the self-awareness or the realization that, oh my goodness, I'm falling back into that same pattern.
Yeah.
And catching that, because we have that self-awareness, that realization, and all the things we use along the way to strengthen our resolve, our character, from you with CrossFit to just everything that we do. Those little things add up, listeners. They add up to making us being more resilient, more compassionate, empathetic, realizing that we were human, what caused us to get there, accepting it, moving forward like you did with your father, and and you said you had a 19 and a 15-year-old kid,
Yeah.
and it's never too late to create memories with them. Right. And yes, they'll think about certain things that, maybe dad wasn't present here or wish he would have. But if you do enough great things now, it's never too late. And listeners, I've got 5 kids as a single dad, as some of you that may be new listeners, and that journey, even now as adults, I'm constantly striving to ensure when I am with them that I am present in that moment. I'm not thinking about my clients. I'm not thinking about the work I have on my desk. I'm not thinking about the coach and client that I'm going to see tomorrow, or whatever the case may be, a podcast I'm going to record. I'm present. And that is something I have to work at, to make sure that the noise, that external noise, that I rise above it, that it's not slowing me down, making me just focus on the destination and achieving that next great thing. Because the biggest thing that I can achieve, the biggest destination for myself, and just as you mentioned, is the memories. Because that life's in session. We just have to keep on pushing forward.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Exactly what you described. I'm pursuing.
So you've mentioned about the fact of the destination. What was the biggest key thing that made you realize that you were missing the journey? Was there any one key thing that stands out to you that was an aha moment, a light bulb moment that said, holy crap, I'm so focused on everything. I've arrived at the destination, but I don't remember anything along the path.
I mean, there were I think it was an accumulation of several events, which I was, I knew they were happening, but I was kind of hiding myself from them. Was putting them in the back of my mind, especially with my family. Not being present for my kids, or not putting them first. I was traveling too much. I was partying too much. I was not there. I was working way too much. I had money, great, but I couldn't use the money. So, and that was the realization of all of that. I think it didn't happen just overnight. It was like a long process. And then when I moved to Finland, yes. When I moved to Finland, I did this test online. I think it's called the positive assessment intelligence or something like that, where they talk about saboteurs in your head. So you do this test to find out your saboteurs. And my number one saboteur was the hyper achiever. This is the guy who achieves for the sake of achieving. And I had not realized how strong it was in me until then. And so that was like, that was some sort of a breakthrough. So now it helped me become more aware of myself one more time. So now I'm really paying attention when I want to achieve just for the sake of achieving for nothing, because so sometimes instead of continuing what I'm doing, I just stop there and leave it as it is, because that is absolutely fine. And I do something else, take care of myself, take care of my kids, spend time reading a book. It's
It's all back to self-awareness and changing the way we associate to life, right?
And not chasing money.
Yeah, because I get people saying it to me all the time, well, why are you doing like, why are you putting all this effort in? Why did you create this brand, write a book, start a podcast? Why did you do all this stuff? Like, why can't you just be satisfied? Because being satisfied is like, to me, that's being mentally dead. I'm just sitting there. I'm not growing. I'm not moving forward. I'm just living a life of serving and pleasing myself, and I'm not worrying about others. I that hamster wheel we talked about. So, I appreciate your response to that, because it's so easy, listeners, to miss the journey. I look back as a single dad raising my kids, and all the confusion and all the stress about finances and not sure where things were going to go the next day, that when I was hanging out with them, I wasn't present in the moment. And things slip by so fast, but it's never too late to give a heck about your family. I don't care what age they are. You could be somebody listening. I have listeners in their 60s and 70s that go over to your kids now and say, hey, you know, this is tough for me to admit. This is what I was like. This, I don't like being like that. And here's the origin of how I got here. And there's no excuse, but I want you to understand, can we connect? Can we figure things out? Because guaranteed they're doing the same patterns in a lot of ways that you put them through. And maybe they need to break the chain, and somebody has to just stand up and be counted and be vulnerable. So, you know, listener, maybe that's you. I don't care what age you are. It's never too late to be vulnerable.
And I would add to that, stop hiding behind your device. You know, nothing will replace a good one-on-one conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't use social media to communicate, because you're not communicating. So if you want
because everybody interprets it the way they feel.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You could post something so harmless, and I read your post and it's like, and I'm in an angst moment and I'm thinking that you're going, that you're jumping out at me. And you could be posting something that has nothing to do with me, and I take it that you're talking to me.
Yes.
Right. Social media is a good tool if utilized correctly. Text messages are terrible too. Listeners, emails, text messages, if you're upset and you format a text or an email or any form of communication like a DM, stew on it. If it's important, right? Wait till the next day. Read it again when you're in only read it again when you're in a different state of mind, where you're calm, and then read it out loud. That is my advice to people. When you read things out loud, your brain hears it differently, and our brain does not know the difference between a lie and a truth. So when you're calm and you read it out loud, your brain interprets it differently than when you were thinking it between your 6 inches and creating that text, email, DM, or whatever. Don't just think you have the right to launch and tirade about anything, because the wrath and the people you hurt because you were in that moment of anger or sadness or whatever the case may be, you can damage people, and nobody has the right to damage others, no matter what the circumstance. You're better to be a bigger person and just walk away, right, and move on.
It's actually a great exercise to do. Like, write that text, email when you're really angry. Don't send it, and then the next day when you come, like you said, read it out loud and realize how stupid it sounds.
Exactly.
Because it is stupid.
And sometimes the message is good, and then you'll redo it. I've seen, and I've had it myself, like, just like you said, oh, that's stupid. And then I'll rewrite it. All of a sudden, that's something that was a story is now a couple lines, and it gets right to the point. And then I wordsmith it so that it gets across what I needed to get across. And that's okay for you to wait. And most people just don't get that. So, Laurent, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Woo. Wow. I think one thing, maybe two things.
Sure. Yeah.
The first one would be, I mentioned Simon Sinek, start with why, but this is absolutely true. Find what you were born to do. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if others are already doing it. It's gonna be unique because it's you. And that will help you, in your journey. That will help you because it gives you purpose. It gives you a meaning. So you have to find that. That's it was for me that being a coach is my purpose. I know that I love it. I just love it. I can feel it in my blood. I would say that one thing. Two, take care of yourself. Like take care of yourself both physically and mentally, because People around you deserve it. If you're an entrepreneur, how can you take care of your company if you don't take care of yourself? How can you take care of your employees if you don't take care of yourself? How can you make all these decisions that you have to make if you don't take care of yourself? But it applies to all the other categories as entrepreneurs. How can you take care of others? How can you take care of your kids, your partners, your family who need you if you don't take care of yourself? They deserve it.
Completely agree. I completely agree. We don't have enough good things right from childhood to adulthood through schools that teach us how to level up. They don't teach us how to, just simple things that I coach on. I won't get into all the details, but I coach people that you can actually get to a point in your life where you never have a bad day. And people question that. Well, what do you mean? I have bad moments in my days, but I take those moments and I do whatever to change my state. I'm not 100% successful, but I don't go around telling myself out loud to other people or even between my 6 inches that I'm having a bad day. And as I've continually conditioned myself and then coach others to do the same way, I have a better life. And that's part of taking care of myself, because I don't want to be that person that, I'm having a bad day. Well, then the rest of the day is bad. I'm telling my brain I'm in a pissy and crappy mood. And then I'm spreading that joy or lack of joy to other people. So I appreciate your responses. That's good. We got to figure out what we're born to do and take care of ourselves. Right. So our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what is the best way to reach you?
Best way to reach me is LinkedIn. So you can find my name, Laurent Notin. Otherwise, I have a website, laurentnotin.com, and a podcast, laurentnotin.com/podcast. It's all about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, your podcast is Interviews Cracking the Entrepreneurship Code, correct?
Exactly, yes.
And I imagine it's on most of the major platforms. So listeners, please check that out. I'm looking forward to checking it out myself. Especially after this fantastic conversation, I imagine the nuggets of information that Laurent brings out are going to be invaluable to many people, including myself. So thank you so much for being on Give a Heck, Laurent. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so others too can learn. It is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.